Okay, so I'm going to cover multiplying and dividing in standard form here. Before I do though, I'm just going to go over the three indice laws, which I'm guessing because you're watching this video you kind of know already, but just in case you don't, number one, if we have y to the power of a times by y to the power of b, because we have the same base, y, and we multiply two things to the same base, we just add the powers together, so we'll have y to the power of a plus b. So just to repeat, when I have two things to the same base and they're being multiplied, we just add together the power of a and the power of b to get y to the a plus b. So that's indice law number one. If I have y to the a divided by y to the b, same, again, we have the same base, but this time we're not multiplying, we're dividing. We just subtract the powers, so it'll be y to the a minus b. And the third indice law, if we have y to the a, close brackets, all in brackets, all to the power of b, then we just multiply the powers, so it'll be y to the a times by b, or y to the ab. So those are the three indice laws you should know about before starting any of the following questions. Okay, we'll start with quite simple. 3 times by 10 to the 7, all multiplied by 2 times by 10 to the 5. We deal with this in two parts. We deal with the normal numbers, the 3 and the 2, separately, and then we deal with the powers of 10, so the 10 to the 7 and 10 to the 5 separately. Okay, so I'm simply going to start off by doing 3 times by 2, and the answer to that is 6. Then I'll deal with the powers of 10, so I have 10 to the 7 times by 10 to the 5. Indice law number 1, same base, both base 10, so I just add together 7 and 5, so I get 7 plus 5, 12. So the answer to this is 6 times by 10 to the 12. Now this is in standard form. The reason it's in standard form because we have a number times by 10 to the power of something, where this number is between 1 and 10. So 6 is okay because it's between 1 and 10. Building up a little bit. Once again, I'll times 7 by 8 and I'll get 56. Times by, add the powers together, so 10 to the power of 3 plus 9, so 10 to the power of 12. In the last example, we were kind of done at this point. Hopefully you're looking at this and you're realizing we're not done, because 56 is not between 1 and 10. The way I'm going to deal with that is the decimal is right here at the moment. I'm going to shift the decimal 1 to the left and make it 5.6. Now, to do that, I had to divide 56 by 10. Now, to make this answer, whatever it is, equal to this answer down here, it's only fair that to counterbalance the fact that I divided this by 10, that I multiply this by 10, because actually then our answer here and our answer here will be equal to each other. I've just divided this by 10 times this by 10, the overall answer will be the same. Now, if you're looking at this and you're saying, okay, what's 10 to the power of 12 times by 10? If that confuses you, you just think about 10 as 10 to the power of 1. And then it actually becomes quite obvious what the answer is, because we just add together the powers. So we have 10 to the power of 12 plus 1, so 10 to the power of 13. And now this thing here, that's all good, it's in standard form, because this thing here is between 1 and 10. So just to emphasize the point here, we divided this number by 10, and to make it fair, we then multiplied this number by 10 to make it all in standard form. Okay. Now, I've got a couple of examples here where we're going to divide, but really it's just the same thing, except we're doing 8 divided by 2 this time to get 4, times by 10, and this time we're going to apply indice rule number 2, where we subtract the powers because we're dividing. So it's going to be 10 to the power of 9 minus 3, 10 to the power of 6. So I won't spend too long on this. It's the same thing really, which is dividing instead of multiplying, which means we do 8 divided by 2, and that we do 9 minus 3 to get 6 rather than 9 plus 3. And this, again, this is in standard form because this number here is between 1 and 10. Next example, nothing too different here. I'll divide 4 by 5 to get 0.8 times by 10 to the 21 divided by 10 to the 6 is just 10 to the 21 minus 6, so 10 to the 15. And now again in this case we're not in standard form because this number is not between 1 and 10. To make it between 1 and 10, I'll shift the decimal over here, and if I do that, this becomes 8 times by 10 to the something. Now to make this shift happen, I had to multiply 0.8 by 10, which means to make it fair, I have to divide 10 to the 15 by 10, or more specifically divided by 10 to the power of 1, and therefore I must take away 1 from 15 to make it 10 to the 14. And now this thing here is in standard form. And then just to finish off, you might have something looking like this. There are two ways I think you can approach this. The first way is kind of the longer way, but it's the way to think about it if you're either 1, you're new to this, or 2, you're more of a visual learner. You could just think about this as this, where you're literally just writing out the whole thing twice because we're being squared. So hopefully you understand why this whole thing is equal to this whole thing, because we're just squaring the expression in the bracket. And then you could just go about it the way we've done previously. 4 by 4 is 16, times by 10 to the 14, because we add together 7 is 7. Divide this 16 by 10 to make it 1.6, times this by 10 to make it 10 to the 15, and that's our answer. The second way to go about it, if I just write it out here again, is I suppose the way you'd go about it if you're a bit more confident. We're going to apply the third indice rule here. Because we have a 2 outside a bracket, we'll actually multiply 2 and 7, so it'll be 10 to the 14. So applying indice law number 3 here, we just multiplied 7 and 2 to get 14. But then just be really careful, because this 4 is a normal number, so we don't multiply it by 2, we treat it like a normal number and we just square it, as if this 10 to the 7 wasn't here. If I had 4 in a bracket and I squared it, you wouldn't tell me it's 8, you tell me it's 16, because we do 4 squared. And we do the same with him. So 16 times by 10 to the 14, and then same as before, divide by 10, times by 10, and once again we have the same answer as before.